Formula One has seen some stunning car liveries over the years. Personally, I'm a massive fan of the Vodafone McLaren liveries from the mid to late 2000s, and almost anything in red, but not all designs hit the same mark. Today, I'm going to be counting down the top 10 worst Formula One liveries of all time, at least in my opinion. Whether it's their lackluster colour schemes, just general poor design, or just plain ugliness, these liveries stand out for the wrong reasons. In number 10, I've put the 1999 BAR livery. You have the beautiful Lucky Strike livery on one side, and the equally beautiful 555 livery on the other. But when you put them all together, it just doesn't work. I respect the creativity that's going on here, but the zipper, it's just atrocious. I mean, how can you look at that thing when there's two beautiful liveries and they've ruined both? This one does have a good story though. The plan initially was to run one car with the 555 livery and the other with the Lucky Strike livery. But the FIA and Bernie Ecclestone shot down that idea and we ended up with this. Moving on to number 9, we've got the 1979 Shadow DN9. It's iconic, to say the least, but it really looks like a parody of a race livery, the type of Formula One car you'd get if you ordered a McDonald's Happy Meal. The blue's nice, I agree, but the flaming lion eating the radiator, that's just something else. I'm sure the flames add 10 horsepower and the designers were keeping that in mind. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy the novelty value of a livery, but in this case, it's just way too much. It overshadows the actual car itself, and it's Formula One at the end of the day. We want the car to look like a race car. In number 8, I've put the Honda RA107, the Earth car. From some angles, this car is beautiful, but from most, it just feels a bit off. You've got the bluey-green livery that Honda introduced to bring attention to climate change. It's supposed to be a view of the Earth from space. Now, many love it, and I understand from a conceptual standpoint, it's very cool, but the Earth livery's execution didn't translate well, especially when the car was actually moving, which is crucial because most people watch Formula One when the cars are moving. It just came across as an ugly, greeny blue blob, and the non-earth shattering performance definitely didn't help here, no matter how hard Jensen or Rubens Barrichello tried. For number 7, we have the 1999 Arrows A20. Similar to the 1999 BAR livery, this one is split down the middle, but in the other way, which I think seems worse somehow. The livery just stops halfway down the car, there's not really any transition at all, and then we've just got solid black. I do like the combo though. If we did have a full Repsol livery, I think it would have been awesome if they hadn't fallen for the Nigerian Prince scam and added the T- colours on the rear half of the car. The abrupt transition to black as well, it just makes it feel incomplete and lazy. If there was a more gradual shift into black or a different design, I feel like it could have been great, but it never happened. I do have a weird soft spot though for those Repsol colours. I think if they tried again, they could have really made something special. In number 6 though, we have the 1994 Lotus 109. And this one is a bit bittersweet, being the final car for the Lotus Formula One team. Sorry, Team Lotus in Formula One. They did have the Lotus 112, but that never ended up racing. I put this one on the list because it just doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. It's a mess of sponsors slapped everywhere, especially considering that Lotus is a team with some of the most iconic liveries of all time, with the John Player Special liveries in the 70s and all the camel liveries they had in the 80s. In number 5, I've got a newer car. We got the 2018 McLaren MCL33. I think this one's pretty straightforward. If you look at it, it's orange. There's not much else going on. It just looks unfinished again to me. Bit of a pattern going on there. There's just no design going on whatsoever, and I think it's lazy. Plus, I've never been a real fan of the orange here. The intense orange is bold, but it just lacks the depth and variation that I want to see on a Formula One car. And again, it's not like McLaren don't have any great liveries from the past to pull from. They do have the iconic Vodafone McLaren liveries and the Marlboro liveries. In number 4, we do have the 2016 Ferrari SF16. Now, this is a classic case of what may have looked good in the past won't always look good in the present. I can't get behind the red and white Ferrari in this case. At the end of the day, as a Ferrari fan, I do still prefer this to many other liveries because it is red, but the design was just not it. If they went all out with the red and white, similar to the Ferrari 312T, I think it would have been much better. But instead, they threw in this little splash of black, if you see it there on the engine cover. And in my opinion, it just does not work. The sponsors are also placed in a way which annoys me. If we look at the Alfa Romeo logo on the back of the car, it's sitting just higher than the others all by itself, and it doesn't seem to fit in. Now, we are moving on to the podium positions here of my least favourite Formula One liveries. And in number 3, we have the 2008 Renault R27. Fun fact, this is actually the exact same livery as used in previous years. However, instead of the mild 7 parts, we have ING replacing it. And it really clashed with the Renault colours and the other branding on the car, creating one of my least favourite Formula 1 liveries. And I feel the ING colours do give you quite a bit to work with as a designer. In second place, we do have the newest Formula 1 car on this list. I'm sure you can probably guess what it is, but it is the 2019 Williams. In one word, just gradients. Not a fan of gradients at all, and Williams didn't even do it well. And in 2019, there were so many white cars on the grid, and the previous Martini liveries, they were okay. They weren't amazing, but they were much better than this. It just really seems like they took a step backwards, threw a gradient on the car last minute, and then threw their sponsors on it without thinking much about it. I think it's overly simplistic, and it's not done in a good way. And looking at it again, it definitely reminds me of a tube of toothpaste. As a side note, I do want to bring it up as much as I can. Williams' new livery with the Duracell sponsorship on the vent up the top is beautiful. It's one of my favorite sponsorship implementations of all time. And finally, to top it off, my number one livery for the worst Formula 1 liveries goes to the Sauber C35 from 2016. Now, many might disagree, but I feel it's just too minimalistic and it feels cheap. I'm sure many like it, the vibe and the color scheme. I don't think it's bad, but it reminds me of IKEA. And if it did have an IKEA logo on it, I actually might like it a bit more from the novelty aspect, but it didn't. And it just felt underwhelming and excessively plain. Especially for this era of Sauber though, it was probably more to do with their budget constraints than the lack of their actual design intent. There are very few sponsors on the car for that reason. Let me know your least favorite liveries down below. And for more Formula 1, watch my video on Senna versus Prost on screen now.